Universal Joy researchers discovered human grandmother cooking contains measurable love. Part 1. The reading made no sense. Al stared at her instruments for the third time that morning, her compound eyes reflecting the bright red warnings flashing across the screen. She tapped the display with one of her four thin fingers, thinking perhaps the equipment had malfunctioned. But the diagnostic came back clean. Everything was working perfectly, which meant the reading was real. For 600 years, Al had studied happiness. She was the Galactic Consortium's leading expert on positive emotional phenomena. Her species, experienced emotions as mathematical patterns, which made them perfect for this kind of research. They could observe feelings without being overwhelmed by them. They could measure joy the way others might measure temperature or weight. Al had measured a lot of joy in her long career. She had been present when the singing monks of Tarsus 9 achieved perfect harmony, creating waves of contentment that spread across their entire moon. She had documented the collective happiness of the Hive Queens when they welcomed a new generation. She had even captured the exact frequency of his first laugh, a sound so pure it had brought tears to every being who heard it. But this reading from Earth was different. It wasn't just strong, it was impossible. The energy signature showed a concentration of positive emotion, so dense it had actually altered the molecular structure of physical matter. That shouldn't happen. Emotions were energy, yes, but they were subtle. They influenced things gently over time. They didn't just reach out and rearrange atoms. Yet something on Earth was doing exactly that. Al pulled up the location data. The signal came from a small town in the middle of Earth's North American continent, a place called Cedar Grove, Iowa. Population 3,012 humans, nothing special about it. No major technology centers, no psionic academies, no ancient temples or power sources. Just a normal human town. She filed a request for a research team. Within 2 days, she had her crew. Doctor was a being made entirely of living crystal, and he could see emotional wavelengths that most species couldn't even imagine. Commander came along as their security officer and pilot. He was a large reptilian from a warrior culture, not given to displays of feeling, which made him a good neutral observer. And finally, Professor joined them. She had no body at all, just pure consciousness held together by will. She existed partly outside normal space, and could perceive things that others missed entirely. They took a small research vessel down to Earth. The humans had been part of the Galactic Consortium for 20 years now, so visits from aliens were not unusual. Still, Al sent a polite message ahead to the local authorities, explaining they were conducting a study and requesting permission to investigate a residential area. The human administrator wrote back within an hour. "Sure thing. Let us know if you need anything. Welcome to Cedar Grove." The casual friendliness was very human. Al had always found their species charmingly informal. They landed their ship in a park near the center of town. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the autumn air was cool and crisp. Leaves in shades of red and gold drifted down from the trees. Human children played on swings and slides, and several stopped to wave at the alien visitors. Parents called out greetings. Al checked her handheld scanner. The signal was stronger here, pulsing like a heartbeat. She followed it down a quiet street lined with old houses. The readings grew more intense with every step. Whatever was generating this energy, it was close. They stopped in front of a 2-story home with white painted wood and a front porch covered in orange pumpkins. The scanner nearly vibrated in Al's hand. This was it. Ground Zero. Doctor hummed softly, which meant he was excited. "I'm seeing emotional harmonics I've never encountered before. Multiple frequencies, all positive, all interweaving. It's beautiful." Commander's tail swished back and forth. Could it be a weapon? Some kind of emotional manipulation device? "No," Professor said. Her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "There's no aggression in it, no control, just warmth, affection, care." She paused. We should knock on the door. Al agreed. She walked up the wooden steps and pressed the button marked doorbell. Inside, she heard it chime, followed by the sound of footsteps. The door opened to reveal an elderly human woman. She was short and round, with dark hair streaked with silver, pulled back in a bun. She wore an apron covered in flour, and the most amazing smell wafted out from behind her. Al's translator implant identified it as baking bread and chocolate. The woman's face lit up with a smile. "Oh, hello there. You must be the researchers from the message. Please come in, come in." They entered cautiously. The inside of the home was warm and cluttered in a comfortable way. Photographs covered the walls, showing humans of various ages. The furniture looked old but well cared for, and the smells from deeper in the house were overwhelming in their appeal. Led them to a kitchen. It was a modest room with white cabinets and counters covered in baking supplies. A tray of cookies was cooling on the counter, and something bubbled gently in a pot on the stove. Al's scanner went wild. The energy was everywhere in this room, strongest near the cookies and the pot. "I was just making treats for Mai," explained. "They'll be here in an hour. Would you like some cookies? They're still warm, and I have soup on the stove. You must be hungry after your trip." Before anyone could respond, was already moving. She grabbed a plate and began loading it with cookies. She ladled soup into bowls. She pulled out a chair and gestured for them to sit. "Now, you mentioned in your message that you were studying something in our neighborhood," said as she worked. "What exactly are you looking for? Maybe I can help." Al looked at her instruments. The readings were off the charts. She pointed the scanner directly at a cookie. The data made her breath catch. The cookie wasn't just food. It contained measurable quantities of positive emotional energy, woven into its structure at the molecular level. It was impossible, but it was real. "We're looking for the source of an unusual energy reading," Al said slowly. She looked up at. "I believe we found it. It's you. Or rather, it's what you're doing." Blinked. "I'm sorry, dear. I don't understand." Doctor leaned forward, his crystal body refracting the kitchen light. "Your food contains emotion. Actual, measurable, positive emotional energy. I've never seen anything like it." Laughed, a warm sound that seemed to fill the kitchen. "Oh, that's sweet of you to say. I just try to make things the way my grandmother taught me. With love, you know." "But that's just an expression, isn't it?" Commander asked. His voice was uncertain. "A metaphor." Paused, spatula in hand. She looked at each of them in turn, her expression thoughtful. "Is it? I never really thought about it. When I cook for my family, I think about them, about what they like, about wanting them to be happy and healthy, about memories we've shared. I guess I always assumed everyone did that." Professor drifted closer to the stove. When she spoke, her voice was filled with wonder. "You're infusing the food with intention, with care. You're thinking about specific people you love, and somehow that thought is becoming part of the physical substance. It's quantum entanglement on an emotional level." Smiled and shook her head. "I don't know about all that. I just know that when I make my grandson's favorite cookies, I think about the time he fell off his bike and scraped his knee. I think about how these same cookies made him smile through his tears. When I make soup, I remember my daughter coming home from school, cold and tired, and how a warm bowl made everything better." She stirred the pot gently. "I suppose I put memories into it, memories and hopes. Is that what you're measuring?" Al sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. In 600 years of research, she had never encountered anything like this. Emotions influenced matter all the time, but slowly, subtly. This was direct, immediate, and apparently this human woman had no idea she was doing something that should be scientifically impossible. "May we try some?" Al asked quietly. "The soup and cookies." "Of course," beamed. She served them all, fussing over each portion, making sure everyone had enough. Al lifted a cookie to her mouth. Her species didn't have a strong sense of taste, but they could eat most carbon-based foods. She bit down. Flavor exploded across her tongue, but that was the least of it. She felt something she had only measured from the outside before. She felt cared for. She felt welcomed. She felt as if someone had noticed she existed and wanted good things for her. It was like being wrapped in a warm blanket made of affection. Across the table, Commander made a strange sound. His eyes were wet. He clutched his spoon with a trembling hand. "This shouldn't be possible," he whispered. "I can taste that you care. I can taste that you want me to be well." His voice cracked. "My mother used to make a soup when I was young, before I joined the military. I hadn't thought about it in years. This feels like that, like being young and safe." Doctor's crystal structure hummed with harmonic frequencies. Remarkable, absolutely remarkable. Professor had no body to eat with, but she drifted through the steam rising from the soup pot. "I can perceive it directly. The love is real. It's measurable. It's there." Smiled and patted its large-scaled hand. "That's the point, isn't it? To make people feel cared for, to give them a moment of comfort. Food is just food, but when you make it for someone you love, it becomes something more." Al set down her cookie carefully. She looked at this small, elderly human woman in her flour-dusted apron, standing in her modest kitchen, and realized that they had stumbled onto something extraordinary. Humanity had just changed everything the Galactic Consortium knew about the relationship between emotion and matter. And it had happened in a grandmother's kitchen, over cookies and soup. Part 2. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Al's small research team turns kitchen into a laboratory, though they tried to be respectful about it. Sensors were mounted on the walls. Scanners were positioned over the stove. Cameras recorded every movement made. Took it all in stride. She continued her normal routine, cooking breakfast for herself, preparing meals, baking treats. She seemed amused by all the attention. "I've never been so interesting before," she told Al with a laugh. The data that came back was consistent and impossible to argue with. Every single item prepared showed the same phenomenon. Her scrambled eggs contained measurable positive emotion. Her toast radiated warmth. Even the simple sandwich she made for lunch showed traces of the same energy signature. But it only happened when she was cooking for someone specific. When Al asked her to make a batch of cookies for no one in particular, just as a test, the readings were normal. The cookies were still good, but they were just cookies. There was no emotional energy in them at all. "I need to know who I'm making them for," explained. "Otherwise it feels wrong, empty, like going through the motions." Doctor spent hours analyzing the molecular structure of cooking. He discovered that the emotional energy wasn't just sitting on the surface. It was integrated into the food at every level. The proteins, the carbohydrates, even the water molecules showed signs of alteration. It was as if intention had reached down to the atomic level and reorganized things. "But how?" asked, frustrated. "Conscious thought doesn't have enough energy to do this. Even the most powerful psionics can't directly manipulate matter without tremendous effort, yet she does it without even trying." Professor had a theory. She had been observing carefully, watching the way she moved through the kitchen. "It's not just one moment of intention," explained to the team. "It's repetition. Has been cooking in this kitchen for decades. She's made these recipes hundreds, maybe thousands of times. She knows every measurement by heart. She doesn't have to think about the steps anymore." "Muscle memory," Commander said. "Yes, but more than that. The repetition has created a kind of groove in reality, a well-worn path. And because she follows that path while thinking about specific people she loves, the intention gets stronger, deeper. It's like water carving stone. Each individual moment is small, but over years it creates something permanent." Al considered this. "So it requires long-term practice, deep familiarity with both the process and the people being fed." "I believe so," said. They decided to expand the study. With permission and assistance, they invited other humans to participate. They brought in professional chefs from nearby cities. They contacted parents and grandparents. They even spoke with students who were just learning to cook. The professional chefs were skilled. Their food was beautiful and delicious. But when tested, it showed only minimal emotional energy. One chef, a man named Thomas who ran a successful restaurant, seemed almost offended by this. "I put passion into my cooking," he insisted. "But not love for specific individuals," Doctor pointed out gently. "You cook for strangers, people you'll never meet. Your intention is to create good food, which you do excellently, but that's different from what does." They tested Thomas again, but this time asked him to make his daughter's favorite meal. The girl was at college across the state. Thomas hadn't seen her in months. As he cooked, he talked about her, about how she liked extra garlic in the pasta, about how she always picked out the mushrooms when she was little, about how he hoped she was eating well at school. When they tested that meal, the reading spiked. Thomas stared at the instruments in wonder. "It really is different," he whispered. "I can feel it. This one matters more." They tested parents next. The results were positive but varied. Young parents cooking for infants showed some effect, but not as strong as. Parents cooking for teenagers showed inconsistent results, particularly if the relationship was strained. But parents who had been cooking for their families for years, who knew everyone's preferences and allergies and comfort foods, they showed much stronger readings. The pattern became clear. The phenomenon required three elements: genuine love or care for specific individuals, deep familiarity born from repetition, and the intention to nurture and comfort. All three had to be present. The strongest readings consistently came from grandparents. One grandmother they tested, a woman named Helen who was 83 years old, produced results nearly as strong as. She made apple pie from memory, explaining that it was her grandson's favorite. "He's in the military now, stationed on that new colony near Rigel. I send him a care package every month, but it's not the same as being here. I wish I could send him this pie. I worry about him out there." As she spoke, the emotional readings climbed higher. The pie she made wasn't just food. It was worry transformed into care. It was love given physical form. Commander ate a slice of that pie. He had to leave the room afterward. They found him outside, sitting on the porch steps, his face wet with tears. "I understand now," he said when Al came to check on him. "My mother died when I was young, but I remember. She used to make these small cakes for me every morning before I went to school. I never told her how much they meant to me. I was a stupid child, and then she was gone." He looked up at the sky. "I would give anything to tell her now. To let her know that I remember, that those cakes were the best part of my day." Al sat beside him. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she said, "I think she knew. That's why she made them." By the end of the week, they had tested 47 humans. The results were clear enough to publish. Al began writing her report, trying to find the right words to explain what they had discovered. She was working on the conclusion when knocked on the door of their ship. She carried a covered dish. "I thought you all might want some dinner," she said. "You've been working so hard." Inside the dish was a casserole, some kind of pasta with cheese and vegetables. It smelled incredible. Had also brought a salad and a container of cookies. "I wasn't sure what your species could eat," said, "so I kept it simple. I hope that's all right." They ate together in the ship's small common area. As they ate, asked questions about their work, about their homes, about their families. She listened carefully to each answer, asking follow-up questions, genuinely interested. Al found herself talking about her childhood about the massive crystalline cities where she grew up, about her mentor who had taught her to see emotions as beautiful mathematical patterns. She hadn't thought about her mentor in decades. The memory made her chest feel tight. "You miss them?" said softly. "Yes, they died 70 years ago. It's been a long time." Reached across the table and patted Al's hand. The gesture was simple, human, and completely inappropriate by standards. Physical contact outside of mating was unusual for her species, but somehow it didn't feel wrong. It felt comforting. The people we love never really leave us, said. They're in here, she tapped her chest. In our memories, in the things they taught us. You carry your mentor with you every day in the work you do. Al felt something wet on her face. Her species didn't cry often, but when they did, the tears were thick and slow. Handed her a cloth napkin without comment. Later that night, as the team reviewed the day's data, Doctor made an observation. Made dinner for us tonight. We should scan the leftovers. They did. The readings were strong, positive, warm. She barely knows us, said, confused. We've only been here a week. But she cares, said. She genuinely cares about she asked about our lives, our families. She paid attention, and then she cooked for us with that knowledge, with that care. Al looked at the data readouts, had somehow decided that 4 alien strangers who had invaded her kitchen with scientific equipment were worthy of her care. And so she had fed them, and in feeding them, she had given them something precious. We need to test this on a larger scale, Al said. If this phenomenon is common among human grandparents, if it can be taught or developed, the implications are enormous. How so? Asked. Al pulled up a star map. The Galactic Consortium stretched across thousands of systems, billions of beings from hundreds of species, all trying to coexist. Imagine if we could spread this. Not just the food itself, but the understanding, the practice. What if we could teach other species to infuse their care into physical objects? Or what if we simply brought human grandmothers to places that needed comfort? Crystal structure hummed thoughtfully. Diplomatic stations, military outposts, colony worlds far from home. Exactly, places where people feel isolated, lonely, afraid. A meal made with genuine care could help. It's not a solution to everything, cautioned. It won't stop wars or cure diseases. It won't solve political problems. No, Al agreed, but it might make people feel less alone, and sometimes that's enough. They worked late into the night, refining their findings, preparing the report that would change everything. In the kitchen next door, went to bed, completely unaware that she had revolutionized the consortium's understanding of emotion, matter, and the space between them. In the morning, she would wake up and make breakfast, and it would contain love, measurable and real, because that's what grandmothers do. Part 3. The report hit the Galactic Consortium like a meteor. Within days, Al's findings were being discussed on every major world. Scientists from 100 species requested copies of the data. News services ran features about the grandmother phenomenon. And everyone, it seemed, wanted to meet. Handled the attention with the same calm warmth she brought to everything else. When ambassadors requested meetings, she invited them to her kitchen. When scientists wanted to observe her cooking, she put them to work chopping vegetables. If you're going to be in my way, you might as well be useful, she told a Nobel-equivalent prize winner from Andromeda, handing him a cutting board and a pile of carrots. But Al was careful to protect from being overwhelmed. She limited visits, established protocols, and made sure had time for her actual family. Because as the research expanded, one thing became very clear. The phenomenon only worked if the care was genuine. You couldn't fake it. You couldn't rush it. It required real love given freely. Other research teams began studying their own species' traditions. The Al's people discovered that their ritual crystal harmonics carried similar properties when performed for loved ones. They found it in their lullabies. The aquatic Delphi detected it in the special waters they prepared for their young. The human grandmother effect wasn't unique to humans, but humans had developed it to an extraordinary degree, particularly in the tradition of family cooking. And of all humans, grandmothers showed it most consistently and most powerfully. Doctor had a theory about why. It's the combination of experience and freedom, he explained at a conference. Grandparents have usually been cooking for decades. They have the repetition, the muscle memory, the deep familiarity. But unlike parents, they're not stressed about discipline or worried about rules. They can focus purely on giving comfort, on providing joy. There's no mixed agenda, just love. The consortium's Council of Sciences voted to establish a new field of study, practical emotional physics. Al was offered the position of department chair. She accepted on the condition that be named as a consultant emeritus, with full honors and absolutely no required duties except to keep doing what you're doing. Laughed when she heard about the title. I'm a consultant now. What's next? Will they ask me to teach classes? As it turned out, yes. The request came from an unexpected source. Commander submitted a formal proposal to the consortium military division. He wanted to establish a program bringing human grandmothers to military outposts throughout the galaxy. Soldiers far from home suffer, he wrote in his proposal. They experience isolation, stress, homesickness. Current support programs help, but they're not enough. Based on my personal experience with Mrs. Cooking, I believe the grandmother phenomenon could provide meaningful emotional support to military personnel. The proposal was approved. Within 6 months, the first group of volunteers was selected. 23 human grandmothers and grandfathers, all willing to spend a year at various military stations, cooking for soldiers who missed home. Volunteered immediately. My late husband was in the military, she explained. I know what it's like to be far from home. If I can help, I want to. Al tried to talk her out of it. You're 72 years old, these are frontier stations. The conditions are rough. Fixed her with a firm look. Young lady, I raised 3 children, buried a husband, survived 2 recessions, and put myself through nursing school at age 45. I think I can handle some frontier cooking. There was no arguing with that. Was assigned to Outpost Theta-9, a military installation on the edge of consortium space. It housed 300 soldiers from 24 different species. Al pulled strings to get herself assigned as the official researcher monitoring the program. She told herself it was for the sake of science. Really, she just wanted to make sure it was okay. The outpost commander was a gruff named. He seemed skeptical when arrived. No offense, human, but I'm not sure what you think you're going to accomplish here. These are hardened soldiers. They don't need a grandmother. Smiled. Everyone needs a grandmother, dear. Now show me the kitchen. I have work to do. The outpost's kitchen was a sterile, efficient space designed to produce maximum nutrition with minimum effort. Took one look at it and sighed. This won't do at all. I'm going to need some things. She submitted a list. Real ovens, proper mixing bowls, actual spices, fresh ingredients, not just the pre-processed nutrition packs. Commander grumbled about the expense but approved it all. Got to work. She established a routine. Every evening she prepared dinner, not the standard military rations but real food. She rotated through different cuisines, learning about the dietary needs and preferences of the various species. She kept notes about who liked what. She learned names. At first, the soldiers were suspicious. They ate the food because it was there and it was good, but they kept their distance. Military personnel were trained to be self-sufficient. They didn't want to appear weak. But was patient. She didn't push. She just kept cooking, kept learning names, kept asking gentle questions. How was your day? Did you sleep well? Have you heard from your family lately? The breakthrough came 3 weeks after her arrival. A young soldier named Trill came to the kitchen late at night. His species was covered in soft purple fur and his large eyes were wet with tears. I'm sorry to bother you, he said quietly. I miss home. Today was my daughter's birthday. She's turning 6. I wasn't there. Set down the dish she'd been washing. Come here, sweetheart, sit down, tell me about your daughter. Trill sat, and he talked, about his daughter's laugh, about the way she loved to climb trees, about how she'd recently lost her first tooth. Listened, really listened, and when he was done, she said, "Give me a moment." She went to work. 20 minutes later, she placed a small cake in front of him. It was simple, just vanilla with chocolate frosting. But on top, she'd carefully written, "Happy Birthday" in script. I don't know what birthday traditions are like, said. But on Earth, we make a wish and blow out candles. We don't have candles, but we can pretend. Make a wish for your little girl." Trill stared at the cake. His hands trembled. How did you know script?" "I've been studying. I want to be able to write everyone's names properly." Trill closed his eyes. He made a wish. And when he opened them again, he was smiling through his tears. Thank you so much." He took the cake back to his quarters, but word spread. By morning, every soldier on the base knew what had done, and something shifted. They started coming to the kitchen, not just to eat but to talk, to help, to be present. A massive warrior started showing up every morning to help knead bread. "My mother used to make bread," he explained. "I'd forgotten how much I missed it." A young human private taught a recipe her own grandmother used to make. An engineer helped repair the oven when it broke down. The kitchen became a gathering place, a home within the military outpost. Al documented it all. The data was remarkable. Stress indicators across the entire base decreased by 30%. Disciplinary incidents dropped. Morale reports improved. Soldiers reported sleeping better, fighting better, coping better. But the numbers didn't capture everything. They didn't capture the way Trill stopped by the kitchen every evening to tell about the messages from his daughter. They didn't capture the way Commander, the gruff skeptic, started taking his meals at the communal table instead of in his office. They didn't capture the way soldiers from species that had been enemies for generations sat together over soup, swapping stories. 6 months into the program, the outpost faced a crisis. A hostile force attacked a nearby station. Theta-9 was mobilized as part of the response team. 200 soldiers deployed for what would become a 3-week campaign. It was dangerous, exhausting work. They took casualties. They lived on field rations and got maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. When they returned, they were broken, physically and emotionally drained. Several soldiers had been lost. Everyone else was dealing with trauma. Was waiting. She'd spent 3 weeks preparing. The moment the ships docked, the smell of cooking filled the corridors. She'd made everything she could think of. Comfort foods from a dozen different worlds. The kitchen table couldn't hold it all. The soldiers came. Some could barely stand. Others were wounded. All of them were haunted. They sat down, they ate. And slowly, gradually, they began to talk. Moved among them. She didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. She just listened. She refilled bowls. She patted shoulders. She was present in the way only someone who truly cares can be present. Commander found Al later that night. The old's carapace was from decades of combat. His voice was rough. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I've been a soldier for 50 years. I've seen therapists, taken the stress management courses, had the mental health debriefs, all standard protocol, all useful." He paused. "But tonight, with that human grandmother and her soup, my soldiers started healing. Really healing. I watched it happen." "The grandmother phenomenon," Al said softly. "Call it what you want. I call it a miracle." Looked back toward the kitchen. "I was wrong. Everyone needs a grandmother, especially soldiers." Word of Theta-9's success spread. More military outposts requested grandmothers. Then diplomatic stations started asking. Then colony worlds. Then research facilities. The demand far exceeded the supply. But something interesting happened. Other species started volunteering their own elders. Grandmothers who could create harmonic crystals that hummed with care. Delphi grandparents who prepared waters infused with comfort. Elders who told stories that eased pain. The phenomenon wasn't limited to cooking. It wasn't even limited to humans. It was about care given physical form through practice, intention, and love. Al published a follow-up paper titled Universal Applications of Intentional Care. It won every major scientific award. She was invited to lecture on 100 worlds, but the moment that mattered most came a year after they'd first knocked on's door. They were back in Cedar Grove. The research team had returned to check on during her vacation from the outpost. They found her in her kitchen, of course, making dinner for her. "I'm glad you're here," said. "I wanted to show you something." She pulled out a photograph. It showed Trill, the young soldier, standing with his daughter. Both were smiling. "He sent me this. He got leave to go home for her birthday this year, and look." She pointed to the corner of the photo. On a table in the background was a small cake. "He made it himself. He said he wanted his daughter to have a cake made with love the way I taught him." Al looked at the photograph, at the cake, at the smile on the little girl's face. She thought about everything they'd learned over the past year, about emotion and matter, about care and quantum entanglement, about the measurable, provable reality of love. "You've changed the galaxy," Al said quietly. Laughed, that warm sound that could fill a room. "No, dear, I just fed people. That's all any grandmother does. We feed people and hope they feel loved." She turned back to her cooking. "The galaxy was always this way. You just helped everyone notice." That night, as they ate dinner with family, Al's instruments registered the familiar readings. Love, measurable and real. Care made physical. Emotion transformed into sustenance. But she didn't need instruments anymore to know it was there. She could feel it, in the warmth of the kitchen, in the laughter in the way made sure everyone's plate was full. The report had been published. The science was settled. The phenomenon was proven and documented and real. But some things, Al realized, were more than the sum of their measurements. Some things had to be experienced to be understood. She took another bite of pot roast. It tasted like being welcomed home, like being cared for, like love. Because that's what it was. And in kitchens across the galaxy, grandmothers continued their work, making food, making love physical, making the universe one meal at a time a little bit warmer, a little bit kinder, a little bit more like home.